All right.
This is your instruction video for phage DNA extraction. So we are going to use your high titer lysate and extract phage DNA. So right now I'm set up to do aseptic technique. My flame is on and the tabletop has been cleaned. The first thing I'm going to do is transfer 1 ml of my high titer lysate to a microcentrifuge tube. So this will be the only step that we need to use aseptic technique for. And I'm going to use the serological pipette to do this. Alright, that's 1 ml of my high titer lysate into the microcentrifuge tube. So at this point I'm going to turn the flame off and we're going to put our gloves on. And again, you don't want to wear your latex gloves while the flame is on because they could melt to your hand. So right now in this tube we think we have phage, but there could also be some bacteria mixed in. So right now we're going to add a nuclease mix that is going to break down any DNA that the nuclease mix can get to. Right now the phage DNA is protected by the phage capsid. So for this we're going to have our gloves on and walk over to the water bath. Now this nuclease mix is really robust, so we're going to only work with it in this section. If we accidentally get our nuclease mix on anything at our lab stations, it could basically kill off all the phage DNA that we isolate later. So this station is set up with its own micropipette. So I'm going to get 5 microliters of my nuclease mix and add it to my lysate. And I'll do some gentle inversions to mix, but we don't want to vortex because that would just shear up our nuclease and the phage. Now I'm going to pop this into one of the tube holders for the water bath and drop this right into the water bath. And right now it is set to 37 degrees Celsius. So we're going to leave this for 10 minutes to incubate, and whenever I leave my sample in the water bath, I'm going to go ahead and take my gloves off so that I don't track nuclease mix back to the station. So we're going to act like 10 minutes has passed and go back to our station.
And try not to rub or anything.
Okay, so I'm going to get some fresh gloves. Now in that 10 minutes that you were waiting, you could go writing in your lab notebook or start labeling some of the steps for later. So in this tube, hopefully all bacterial or fungal DNA or RNA has been torn up. But now we need to stop that nuclease from working so that it doesn't continue working and then shear up our phage DNA. So to do that, I'm going to add some EDTA. We need 15 microliters of that. And the EDTA is just going to bind to the nucleases and stop them from working. And again, do some gentle inversions. So now the nucleases should be stopped from working, and we're ready to break open the phage capsid that is holding the phage DNA. So to do that, we're going to use some DNA resin, and it has been prepared for you already, aliquoted into these 15 ml tubes. So I'm going to transfer everything that is in my little lysate tube into my tube with resin. And since I've been demoing with just water, I'm going to reuse some of my serological pipettes, but you of course should be switching your pipettes every time. Okay, so my lysate is in here with my resin. Now I'm going to start mixing by inverting for about 2 minutes. So this will take a little while, but invert your tube for 2 minutes. And then I'm going to set this aside, and we're ready to start using our DNA filters. So this is a Wizard DNA column. You're going to need 2 of these, and we're going to label it right across the rim of the column with your initials. And as I've gotten those out, I'm also going to lay out all of the microcentrifuge tubes that I'm going to need. So you'll notice that these tubes are a little bit different from what we've been using. They are kind of reinforced, have a reinforced collar that's going to help us later. So I'm going to lay out 16 of these tubes, 8 to go with each column that I have. To put each of these columns into one clean microcentrifuge tube, and then attach a syringe to each one. So I'm going to pull the plunger out and just pop the syringe onto my filter. Notice I'm putting the plunger back into its wrapping so that it stays sterile. Now, I'm going to transfer 1.5 milliliters of my lysate resin mix into each syringe. I'm going to reuse my syringe at this point, my serological pipette. Alright, and I'm going to hold on to this 15 ml tube that I just pipetted out of, because we're going to use it later. Okay, so now we're going to begin the filtering step. So let me get my plungers, and I'm going to filter this solution right into my 15 ml tube from earlier. And once the plunger goes all the way down to the bottom, keep the pressure on the plunger. I'm going to just dab my filter onto a paper towel to keep it, to dry it off a little bit. And I'm keeping the pressure on this plunger and then twisting the filter off and sticking it into my next tube in line. And I'm going to get rid of the original. And let me reattach my syringe to the filter. I'm going to do the exact same thing with my second tube. Dry it off. Throw that tube away. reattach the filter. And then reattach my syringe to that filter. Okay, so now we're going to do 3 washes with isopropanol to clean the DNA off. So I am going to, with a serological pipette, transfer 2 mils of isopropanol to my syringes. And I'll demo this part just once because it's going to be the same thing over and over again. So I have 2 mils in my syringe of isopropanol, filter into this trash tube, dry off the filter, and again keep pressure on the plunger while I twist that filter off and place it into the next clean tube and junk the old one. So I'm going to do that isopropanol wash 3 times, and then after those 3 washes we'll end up with our filter column sitting in a clean microcentrifuge tube, and now we're ready to try to get rid of any residual isopropanol. So what we're going to do is spin this down in the microcentrifuge over here. So your column is sitting kind of funny in the microcentrifuge tube because the lid won't close. So you're going to load this into the microcentrifuge tube, with the caps laying down flat. So we will spin that for 5 minutes at 10,000 G. And then once that's done, we're going to transfer the column into a fresh tube and spin it again for an additional 1 minute at the same speed, just to make sure there isn't any isopropanol left over. Now I'm going to put my column into another microcentrifuge tube, and you're doing this for both columns that you have. So we've just finished spinning. Now we're going to evaporate out any final residual isopropanol that's left. So we're going to come over to this heat block, and you're going to take your column out and put it directly into the heat block. Just be careful that it doesn't fall down into the hole. So this is going to heat for exactly 1 minute. You don't want to go any longer, or you could burn up your DNA. So now 1 minute has passed. We will put our column into another microcentrifuge tube, and now we're going to elute our DNA, which means we're going to put some liquid on it and pull the DNA down into our tube so that we can keep it. So to elute, we're going to use sterile water, and your sterile water is in another heat block. And I'm going to keep the water inside the heat block as much as possible to keep it nice and warm. I'm going to take 50 microliters of water and then pipette that right down into the column. Then I'm going to let that incubate at room temperature for about 1 minute. Then this whole thing is going back into the centrifuge to spin for another minute, and that spinning is going to bring our DNA and the water down into the bottom of the tube. So coming out of the centrifuge, we should have 2 tubes with 50 microliters of our sample. And I'm just going to combine them together into one final tube. And this final tube should be labeled with your phage name and what it is. And that's the end of phage extraction.
and the end of the video.